Downtown, Petco Park, a new beginning, let's go. Started back rocking the brown. Ever since we've been knocking them down. Baby said she wanna go to the game. Taught her how to say Padre gang. Started back rocking the brown. Ever since we've been knocking them down. Mitchell and Ness with the old school name. All of the homies holler Padre gang. Yeah, that.
And good day, everybody. Welcome to episode 195 of the Talking Friars podcast and YouTube show. I'm your host, Ben Fadden, here today with a special guest. Met her at the Major League Baseball Draft Combine, and that is Alanna Rizzo of MLB Network, co-host with Christopher Russo for High Heat, does some reporting as well for MLB Network, used to work with the Dodgers. I know some Padres fans aren't the biggest fan, but hey, I respect her and love what she does for MLB Network. Alanna, thank you so much for hopping on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, it's interesting to be on a Talking Friars podcast, but good on you for having 194 episodes already. So happy to be with you, Ben. And despite what some of your fan base may think, I do enjoy the Padres. Yes, I spent 7 years with the Dodgers, so my affinity lies there, but I cover all 30 teams now.
I appreciate that. All right, before we get started, this episode is brought to you by GAGLIONE Bros famous cheesesteaks and garlic fries. They're located inside Petco Park during the entire Padres season. You can visit their two locations as well outside Petco, Mission Gorge and Point Loma. Visit gaglionebros.com to view their entire menu. Great garlic fries and cheesesteaks. All right, getting here started with Alanna. Let's start off with High Heat. You come off, well, you kind of had a little bit of a gap between the Dodgers and then MLB Network, but I just want to get your thoughts on how High Heat has started for you and how you're enjoying working with Christopher Russo. I've had him on my show, and when he has a point, he likes sticking to it. And I guess my follow-up question to the first question about how you're doing with High Heat and all that is, has there been some times where it's like, you won an argument, but he's really sticking to what he's saying?
I mean, the one thing that makes Christopher great is his conviction, his personality, his determination to prove a point home. And High Heat came about. I finished working with the Dodgers at the end of the 2020 season after they won the World Series. And, my personal life took me back to the East Coast. So I decided to leave the Dodgers, even though it was a very, very difficult decision because I had a wonderful time there and they treated me with nothing but class and respect. But it was time to make a move. So I decided to leave, and I knew I wasn't going to be done. I just wasn't sure what was next. And MLB Network, and I started talking again. And this is actually my second stint at MLB Network. I was there in 2012 and 13, and then went to the Dodgers for 7 years. And then now I'm back with MLB Network. So they talked to me about potentially being a co-host with Chris on his show. And, at first I was like, oh, I'm not sure that's going to work. And I don't know how my personality, because I'm not much of a debater. I'm more of a, I'm a reporter. I'm a host. So I either set up traffic and kind of tee up our analysts or talk to players and try to humanize a player and get things out of them. So it's definitely a challenging and different role for me, but it's been one where I've really enjoyed. Chris and I love each other. We're great friends. He is as energetic and as eclectic as he comes across on the air. I mean, that is how he is all of the time. We went to dinner in Denver last year during the All-Star game, and that's how he is all the time. I mean, that's how he orders his food. That's how he, talks to everybody. That's just his personality, and it's genuine, and he's, very intelligent. And yeah, I'm not going to sit there and yell back. It's just not my personality, but hopefully it's a good mix.
Mm-hmm. All right, now get into the MLB Draft Combine. That's where we met, and you were there the whole day. Everyone was at MLB Network, but talking with players, former players as well. What was your favorite part of that event, and was there like one big player that stood out for you?
The whole event was really interesting. It's the first time I had ever covered a combine because it's only been the second year that they've actually had it. And even the growth from 2021 to 2022 has been exponential. So this was Harold Reynolds' baby. He really wanted to do this type of combine and have it televised and have more of a fan interaction and fan presence at the event. So San Diego did an amazing job. Petco did an amazing job hosting it. And it was just really cool to see all of the different, physical assessment tests as well as performance assessment tests. And it's like everyone now, all these kids coming up, it's hard to even call them kids because they're built like freight trains. And there's so much more emphasis now on the body and weight training and everything that you do, from diet and nutrition to working out and everything. So that was really interesting to see, and all of the different, the broad jump, and obviously the 60-yard dash and that type of stuff that they're doing was really incredible. So that was a lot of fun to see. I mean, there's a lot of players that stood out to me. Just, I guess, more than anything, it was just the size and the talent level already of these guys, not only at the college ranks, but certainly coming up in high school as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, now get into the big league level. Obviously, you work with the Dodgers, and a lot of Padre fans, they think that the Padre-Dodger thing, it's a rivalry. Some Dodger fans say, no, it's not a rivalry. Look at the record, and, they've won the last, 14 to 16 matchups and all that. They had the World Series in 2020, and, Kershaw throughout the decade's been dominating. I know it's been, some of them were like Ryan Schimpf and Carlos Asuaje. Others were Tatis and Manny. What's your thoughts on this rivalry? Do you think it's a rivalry? I personally think it is. I think that both teams, they definitely get up for those games. The Dodgers, yeah, they have the upper hand, obviously. That's, if you're a Padre fan saying that they don't have the upper hand, you're lying to yourself. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it's a rivalry,
Okay.
only because I think in terms of having a rivalry, I think it needs to be pretty evenly balanced on both sides. If you take a look at the Giants and the Dodgers record over the course of time, even going back to when they were in New York, to when both of the teams moved to Northern California and Southern California respectively, it's pretty even. I mean, I don't know the amount of games, but let's say they've played, 4,400 times, let's just say, in the course of their franchises dating back to New York times. I mean, they're about 2,200 and 2,200. That's a rivalry. And some of the big games that have come down and season ending situations, which it was interesting last year, is the first time the Dodgers and the Giants had met up in a postseason series like that. But until the Padres can show that they can, beat the Dodgers on an equal basis as the Dodgers beating the Padres, I don't think it's quite the rivalry yet. Now, I will say this. In the past 5 to 10 years, I think it's become more of, it's projecting and has more of a traction of becoming a rivalry. There's just not enough history, in my opinion, between the two teams to really qualify it as a bona fide rivalry. I think in recent times, it's definitely been games that you're kind of circling on the calendar. Both teams get up for it. Certainly the fan base has gotten up for it. But until Petco Park, which is one of my favorite parks in all of baseball, until Petco Park is full of Padres fans and it's not necessarily Dodgers Stadium South, that to me is not a rivalry. The Padres need to win more games against the Dodgers, and there has to be more Padres fans in Petco than Dodgers fans. It can't even be split. It needs to be more dominant Padres fans. So it's getting better, but to me, it's not quite the rivalry of, the Giants, Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox type of situation.
Okay, yeah, and what I'll say about the fans is I definitely agree with there being more Padre fans, but like my family has season tickets, and I know a lot of other season ticket holders, and yeah, we should be keeping our tickets for these Dodger games, but I definitely understand the viewpoint of some other season ticket holders where they sell them to Dodger fans, knowing that Dodger fans are gonna buy them and they're gonna get a lot of money back from those tickets, more than they were from what they bought them for. And they don't want to be involved in, those fights and all that stuff going on and bringing kids to the stadium and all that. So I totally understand what you're talking about there. There's also that other side of it. And Dodger fans are Dodger fans. Like, there's Dodger fans in San Diego as well. So I don't know if it's going to get to that point where it's going to be like, I don't know, 85-15 Padre Dodger fans. Like, I just don't know if that's going to ever happen, to be honest.
I mean, Dodgers definitely travel well. Dodgers fans travel well, and it is a very international following. I mean, not only in San Diego, of course, there's a lot of people that have migrated from LA to San Diego or vice versa or whatever. They're two very desirable cities to live in, and they're two very close cities together. But that being said, take the fans out of it. Let's say they played in front of an empty stadium. The Padres need to win just as many games against the Dodgers as the Dodgers have won against the Padres over a course of a certain period of time for me to acknowledge it as a true rivalry. I'm not saying these games don't matter. I'm not saying that it's not going to come down to maybe a couple of games separating the two at the end of the season. In recent times, it is definitely more of a matchup that people are paying attention to. I just don't consider it a rivalry by definition.
That's fair. Yeah, definitely. And you talk about it might get close, at the end of the year, couple games. What do you think's going to need to happen on the Padres side of things for that to happen? The Dodgers, they have a deeper lineup than the Padres. Both starting rotations are really solid. It could come down to the bullpens. We saw this last series last weekend. The Padres offense was just not there the first 35 innings of a 36 inning series. That can't happen. So what other additions do you think AJ Preller needs to make for that gap to kind of, get closer?
I think the biggest thing is who's going to win the trade deadline, right? I do think top to bottom, the Dodgers probably have a bit more depth, but I also think one X factor, honestly, is that the Dodgers just have more playoff experience and postseason experience with the current guys on this roster. I love the Padres rotation. I love, obviously, what Joe Musgrove has done. I love what I've seen from the rookie and Mackenzie Gore. Obviously Blake Snell has had his ups and downs and is not the Blake Snell that I remember from Tampa Bay, which honestly, had Blake Snell stayed in the game, I don't know if the Dodgers would have won that World Series. I think that was a big miscue on the part of Kevin Cash. I mean, we've talked about that obviously at length. It's been 2 years now. Joe Musgrove is in the conversation for the Cy Young. He's in the conversation, obviously, to potentially start the All-Star game. I don't think he will, but he's in that conversation. And Sean Manaea has been impressive, and Yu Darvish and Mike Clevenger are there as well. I think it all comes down to who wins the trade deadline and obviously the bullpen. The bullpen is the one thing that if you ask any front office executive, that the bullpen is the thing keeping people up at night. So how is Craig Kimbrell going to perform deep into the season or into the postseason? What happens when Blake Trinan gets back? Is he going to be super healthy and be able to pick up where he left off? Bruce Dahl Gratterall throws 150 miles an hour, but can he locate? It kind of depends on who in that bullpen can sustain. Are they going to have designated roles? And of course, then as you're mentioning on the position side, if you look top to bottom, everybody says I'm biased, whatever, but look at it objectively. If you look top to bottom at the Dodgers bats, they're just, in my opinion, a deeper team than the Padres are. But the Padres are incredibly talented as well. And that's why I think it's so important to win the division so you don't have to worry about, that 3-game wild card thing and this, that, and the other thing. Now, Manny Machado is an MVP candidate. And you can't tell me there's anybody that wouldn't want Manny Machado on their team at third base. I mean, the guy is just, he posts every single day. He's putting up unbelievable numbers, and he's only 30 years old, I think. So he was born in 1992. In fact, his birthday was 2 days ago. So there you have it. When is Fernando Tatis getting back? Is he going to be healthy when he gets back? They're doing all. So that's something we need to take into consideration as well. It's like the Padres are in this thing without Fernando Tatis, and that's impressive, to be able to do that. You've got a lot of key components on your IL right now. Will Myers, is on the IL. Fernando Tatis is on the IL. Matt Beatty, who is a former Dodger, obviously is on the IL. You got a number of relievers on the IL. Thankfully, right now, this Padres starting rotation is healthy. So it comes down to what they do at the trade deadline, who's healthy, postseason experience. And not only that, I think the fourth thing maybe is who gets hot at the right time. It's one thing to be able to, the Yankees are going to win 115 games, right? But it doesn't mean that they're going to win the World Series because you have to be hot at the right time. And I tell Yankees fans that I would rather the Yankees play decent, respectable baseball in July and August and then ramp back up again in September and October, because you can't play out of your mind for 162 games a year. It's impossible to do that. So, but it's fun that we can actually have this conversation. I like the fact that the Dodgers aren't running away with the division, like they've done in so many years past. And, I like the fact that the Giants wire to wire basically last year, led the division, and it came down to one game, and there you have it. And the Dodgers lose the division by one game. That's good. It's good for baseball. It's good to have parity and competition in baseball.
Right. And Manny Machado, you already talked about him a little bit. Dodger fans love to boo him. Holy cow. I mean, they gave it to him.
The Padres always wanted to be, it was always the place that he wanted to be, and also that the Padres were going to win a World Series before the Dodgers. So I love Manny. I love Manny. I love him. I love his family, but Manny brings a little bit on it himself, be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, they love to boo him, but he is in that MVP race. How do you kind of put that together if you had your MVP voting right now? Like Manny, Goldie, that feels like top two for me right now.
Manny and Goldie, and then Harper before he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
I think you look at where the team would be without that player. Where would the Padres be without Manny Machado? I don't know that they would be where they are right now. Where would the Cardinals be without Paul Goldschmidt? They're 2.5 games out as we have this interview right now in the NL Central against the Brewers. Are the Cardinals only 2.5 games out without what Goldschmidt has done playing out of his mind this year? I'm not sure. And I love Nolan Arenado, and I love some of the other pieces that the Cardinals have, but Goldschmidt is like playing at a caliber that I've not even seen him play at over the course of his career. You think about it. You take Mookie Betts out of the Dodgers lineup, and you still can probably say that the Dodgers, in fact, I want to say the Dodgers are 42-22 with him in the lineup and 11-7 without him. So they still have a winning record with Mookie out of the lineup when he was on the IL. So you got to look at who is going to take your team to the promised land. That's why I have a really hard time choosing an MVP that's not on a winning team. You know what I mean? Where would that team be without said player? So Manny Machado is that guy. I think he's that guy for the Padres. I think Goldschmidt is that guy for the Cardinals. I don't think either way anybody, unless you're a fan of that team, I think you could argue for the other person as well.
Yeah, and with the Padres, I don't even know if they'd be in a playoff spot right now if Manny Machado wasn't playing the way he is, because offense, there's been games where it's like, last night, Manny homered. That was their one run. He doesn't homer last night. They don't go to extra innings. And Musgrove pitched his butt off, a 7-inning shutout, gave up 1 hit, and you're going to extra innings. Like, that's how valuable Manny's been this year.
No question.
Moving to Joe Musgrove. We just talked about him right there. Like, I was talking with Greg Amsinger at the Combine and Jake Peavy, and Amsinger was saying give him $30 million a year. Peavy was saying give him whatever. He's, I'd give him whatever. That's what he's saying. And what would you do? What do you think the Padres need to be offering him on a per year basis to have Musgrove say, I'll stay here? I know he's the hometown guy, but the latest offer was like $11 million a year, and now it's incentive or laden incentives. It's like they got to increase this offer big time for Musgrove to think about staying and not testing free agency right now.
Well, and he has every right to. I think every player should actually go to free agency. I think even if you have it in your mind that you're probably going to stay where you currently are, and he is a hometown kid, obviously the first no-hitter in Padres history. You couldn't have written it better. But I do think that he should test free agency just to see what his value really is out there. And, I don't think players should take hometown discounts. I think there's 780 guys in the world that are good enough to make an opening day roster on day one of a Major League Baseball season. And you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to the players coming up behind you to test free agency and see what your value is. Joe Musgrove right now, 8-2, a 209 earned run average, 99 innings pitched, 98 strikeouts, and a .93 whip. He has had a tremendous year, and I love to see it for him, and I love to see it for the Padres, honestly, because it's nice to have pitchers, other pitchers in the division in the conversation about being the best pitcher in the game. I don't know. AAV is hard for me. It's hard to do a high AAV for a pitcher for me because, they do only play every 5 days. They only pitch every 5 days for the most part. But I think it's important to recognize not only the value that he's had for that team, but also the fact he is from San Diego. And I don't think he should take a hometown discount, but I don't think the team should expect him to either. So it's just a matter of, what's the value to them? Obviously, I would imagine, I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine he'd love to, finish his career as a Padre. That would probably make sense for him. But I do think that every player has the right to test free agency. I do think it is important. I don't know. I don't know what I would give him. That's hard for me to put a number on. As much as he can get, I think he should go for as much as he can possibly get, because you're only in this situation and good enough to be a Major League Baseball player for a very short amount of time. So make as much as you can, as long as you can.
Yep. And one guy the Padres signed in free agency, some fans wish that didn't happen, was Eric Hosmer. 144 million, 8 years, and now since he's going to have 10-5 rights at the end of this season, if Padres don't trade him, he's probably going to be staying here. Do you think that it would be worth it for the Padres to trade Hosmer before the deadline if that means that they have to part with top prospects, and eat a lot of his salary?
I think that would be what's the phrase I'm looking. I think it would look poorly upon the franchise. It's not like Eric Hosmer's having a bad year. He's having a decent year. I'm not saying he's living up to $144 million contract, but it also is very difficult for anybody to live up to some of these numbers now. If you want to break it down, what everyone's making, it's tough to live up to that. People want him hitting, 400 home runs and driving in 500 people. And, it's just difficult. I think if they're in it at the deadline, to trade Eric Hosmer, to me is, I don't think that looks good. So, it's difficult. It is a business, and they're going to do what they feel is right for the team, but it's not like he's having a horrendous year. And to jeopardize the future, to trade a guy like that, I don't see it being worth it. It's not like he's a massive liability.
Yeah. Okay. What I would say to that is he's being more. He's a liability, I think, on defense. And we've seen Bob Melvin take him out last night. We saw him take him out. It's been multiple times in the Dodgers series. Took him out and put Cronenworth at first and put an infielder at second, just because he has been a liability defensively, scooping balls, throwing to wrong bases, not catching pop-ups and let it fall on the mound. Stuff like that. That's where fans, I think, are frustrated. And where you talk about, the fans' high expectations of him, offensively and all the home runs and all that. I think what Padre fans are asking is for him to have a little more power. Like in Kansas, I know he's not in his prime anymore, but in Kansas City, he had like 25 home runs, 22 home runs, or 22 home runs his first year with the Padres.
Sure,
I
but
think
you have
just
to
want
understand
him,
too, he's
just
also
do that.
He's also 32 years old now. It's different. He was drafted in 2008 by the Royals. Like, people get older. Like, you're not going to be able to play at your, physical capabilities at 32 like you could when you were 22. It's just not feasible. But it's not like he has 6 home runs. He's driven in 33. He has 77 hits. He has a 273 average. It's not like he's hitting 173. He has a 329 OBP and a 716 OPS. So the OPS isn't great, but he's not. Maybe get him off his legs, get him off his feet, have him as a DH sometimes over, I don't know. I think Bob Melvin is really, really one of the best at getting the most out of his players. You saw what he had to work with in Oakland in terms of salary and ballpark and all of that stuff. I don't know. I'm a Hosmer fan, so it's hard. I understand when you bring it down by the numbers, but I just don't see. And again, he has that veteran presence, the postseason experience. I don't know that you can necessarily put a value on the other stuff, that he brings to the table.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, you talk about his age and all that, and I think Paul Goldschmidt like 34. Like,
I do believe that Goldie a couple years older. Yes,
I thought he was younger. It feels like, because he signed his contract obviously later than Hosmer, or the extension with St. Louis, but he's producing obviously at an MVP level. We don't want, at least from my point of view, I'm not asking him to produce at an MVP level I'm just asking him to produce consistently throughout the year instead of being a 390 hitter in April and then not doing really much of anything in comparison to that the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric Hosmer would love for that to happen as well. I mean,
Right.
I don't think that any of these guys I don't think anyone's harder on them than they are themselves. And to your question, Paul Goldschmidt's 34, and yeah, he has a 342 average right now, 427 OBP, and he has an OPS over 1. So yeah, I get it. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt right now is playing out of his mind. He's a 7-time All-Star, I believe. So Goldie's having a very special year. And, would we all love to have 9 Goldschmidts on our team? For sure. But that's not realistic. And, I guarantee you that Eric Hosmer would love to be having that type of season too. I just don't see him as being like this. He's not a cancer in the clubhouse. He's a veteran leader. And he does know what it takes to win as well. And I think for that, there is some value in that can't be quantified in the box score.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one here. This has been great. What do you think of the Padres City Connect uniforms?
It's funny because I don't know. I'm not real huge fan. And to be honest, and before I get ripped on Twitter, I don't like the Dodgers City Connect uniforms. So calm down, Padres fans. I loved the video. With, I think it was Machado and Tatis and Musgrove, right? I'm pretty sure it was those 3 guys. And the Santana music was incredible. I love that they had Tony Hawk in that. I love San Diego. It's one of my favorite cities. So the video and the music and the guys and the old cars and all of that stuff and the food scene, loved it. The jerseys and the uniforms, I don't know. I think the best one so far out of all of the ones that have come out so far, I think Boston is number 1. I loved how simple it was. And then the colors with the Boston Marathon, I really like that tie-in and the 617, their area code on the sleeve. I love that. I love Milwaukee's. I think Milwaukee is great. I like the White Sox ones a lot. I think those are pretty sick. I'm not a huge fan of the Dodgers ones. The Padres ones or whatever. Giants ones, whatever. So the NL West is so far on the City Connect jerseys, but I think Boston and Milwaukee have been pretty sweet.
Yeah. All right. This has been great. Episode 195 of the Talking Friars podcast and YouTube show. Ben Fadden with Alanna Rizzo. Alanna, thank you so much for doing this.
You're very welcome, Ben. You take care.
All right, everyone, enjoy the day. Blake Snell on the mound today for the debut of the City Connect uniforms. Everyone, go Padres. See you at the game if you're going, and have a good one.